good evening. We are talking again about weight loss from a different perspective. I just want to give you a little background on myself. I'm just going to adjust this real quick here. I am a chiropractic physician. I am licensed by the state of North Carolina. I am also a board-eligible clinical nutritionist. I am also enrolled in a diplomate program towards functional or chiropractic neurology. Basically, it's a neurologist, but from a perspective of using functional improvement versus just saying, you've got that tumor, cut it out. You know, it's more, hey, what can we do to get it to work better? What can we do to get your body, your brain, your nerves to actually function the way they're supposed to? I've gone through Functional Medicine University. I have trained with Dr. Tatis Karazian, one of the foremost thyroid experts in the world, Dr. Michael Johnson, one of the foremost neurologists in the world. Basically, the training behind what I do is to get you and all my other patients better in ways that they didn't know existed or they didn't know was possible. And again, we use tools that are cutting edge. It's stuff that literally, some of the research we're going to talk about tonight, some of the different techniques that have to do with weight loss are stuff that was published in the last year, the last 2 years, the last 3 years in the medical literature. Whereas otherwise, you know, a lot of these plans that are out there, it's, hey, go on HCG or go on this injection or that injection, or even with Weight Watchers, again, it's an issue of counting calories and that's it. A lot has changed over the past 3, 5, 10, 20 years when it comes to what we consider nutrition. And we're going to talk about some of those myths tonight as well and kind of dispel a couple thoughts that we all probably have as it relates to what we're supposed to be eating. One of the things that I like to talk about is, you know, again, we've talked about why you're here. The biggest frustrations that people have with their weight. And again, you know, a lot of you have tried diets. A lot of you ended up gaining back more weight. It's the yo-yo effect. You know, you lose 10 pounds, you gain back 15. You know, and again, you know, sometimes you don't have the motivation. Maybe you've been told by another physician or a family member you're lazy or you just need to exercise more. And again, the key thing is there's more to it than that. How many of you are trying to do the right thing, what you've been told, and it doesn't work? How many believe that if you exercise more and eat less, that's not for everyone? There's got to be something else out there, right? Okay. So we all know that there are the skinny person who never gains a pound. No matter what they do, they can exercise, they don't exercise, they're going to be skinny. We all know, again, someone that eats nothing and gains weight, right? So it's you got both sides of it. They exercise like crazy, nothing comes out. So if you're overweight or obese, you are not alone at all. And again, just a couple quick stats. Our country is significantly overweight. In the United States, 1 in 3 adults is obese. 34%. 1 in 6 children, this is the really startling one, is obese. And again, it's pretty startling when you think about our children today. You know, and you look at a child today and you look at it and say, hey, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and you see that, go to Kohl's and look at in the children's department and see the sizes that's there and what's available. And there's a huge difference. I mean, there really is. And again, you know, 68% of adults, 33% of our children are considered overweight. Since 1980, we've seen that rate double. We've seen the rate of obese children triple. So again, there's something that's wrong with our country. We're on the wrong path. I want you guys to understand that before this presentation, the concept of being overweight, of not being happy with your weight where it is, being obese, was not your fault. Okay? Before this presentation, I'm going to tell you what you did was not your fault. But you have to understand that we've been provided with inaccurate and bad advice. And this advice that you've been given has led you down this path. Much of the bad advice that we're given comes from the people who profit the most from it. Again, think about the FDA, think about Kellogg, think about, you know, all these companies that are out there that basically tell you what to eat, tell you what's good, what's bad to eat, you know, eat your fiber, eat this, eat that. And they're going to profit from you being sick, they're going to profit from you being overweight. You know, you talk about the pharmaceutical companies that are out there that are basically designed to, hey, you know what, we want you on a cholesterol medication. We want you on a high blood pressure medication, right? So the research that gets done is, in a certain extent, pushing people towards basically developing, you know, these conditions and saying, hey, you know what, we're going to tell you to eat all your fiber. And you know what happens? You eat all that fiber, and it's not necessarily the best thing for you. We'll get to that in a minute. So what we're actually talking about, and I'll give you a couple of examples. We're going to start with grains, okay? A couple of you have heard this before. We're told that grains are like the stuff of life, that eat your grains. They're the best thing for you. If you look at your food pyramid, they're a huge part of it. The U.S. government recommends 6 to 11 servings a day. And what we're talking about is wheat, rice, corn, bread, cereal, pasta. 6 to 11 cups a day is what the U.S. government tells us. They say that it provides the main source of energy for your muscles. They tell you to choose whole grains, which are more nutritious, and they have extra fiber in them. This sounds familiar. Like this makes sense. This is what we're told, right? Okay. So science really says that eating grains drives insulin. Insulin production leads to increased fat storage. It leads to increased heart disease. How about food allergies, immune suppression? A third of the U.S. population is believed to have some form of gluten intolerance. We've all heard of gluten sensitivity. 1 in 3 Americans is believed to have some form of gluten sensitivity. And I do a whole other workshop on celiac disease and autoimmunity, but just really the concept is we eat these grains. The grains that we eat today are not the same as they were 50 years ago. They're not the same as if you go to Europe today or even Canada today. There's been changes to our food supply, and it leads to a lot of these sensitivities and allergy problems developing. Now, if that wasn't enough, whole grains could possibly be the worst thing that you could eat. They cause inflammation. There's more inflammation in a whole grain. They cause your digestive system to work harder to break it down, especially excess fiber. And again, we'll get to that more in a second. So again, we're told whole grains, but what I'm telling you is science shows that whole grains are not the best thing for our body. How about we're told to limit your fat intake, right? Don't eat that meat. Don't eat a lot of meat. It's not good for you. We're told that eating a lot of meat increases your risk of heart disease. We're told eating meat makes you fat. Okay, I'm going to tell you, science says otherwise. Fat is an essential metabolic nutrient. Fat is required for our nerves to function properly. Fat is required for our body to do anything. There's little or no relevance to heart disease risk. There's a study, the Framingham and Nurses Health Studies actually confirmed that one and basically showed the amount of fat that you eat has nothing to do with your risk of dying of a heart attack. It's only dangerous, and we're really talking, let's talk cholesterol here, okay? Elevated cholesterol, which we say comes from fat, is not bad unless there's oxidation or inflammation that occurs. When that occurs, then the plaque gets into the side of our walls and the problem develops. Well, how does inflammation and oxidation occur? From poor diet and bad exercise habits, okay? Statins have disastrous side effects. There's minimal, if any, direct benefit. You know what? One step further, how many here has really good, your doctor said you've got the best cholesterol ever? Anybody here? Okay. I'm going to tell you, if your total cholesterol is under 150, that actually makes you more at risk for autoimmune disease. It makes your body more, and talk about menopause, talk about midlife, right? Does anybody here know what cholesterol does? Cholesterol makes your hormones. It basically gets converted into your steroid hormones, your estrogens, your testosterones, your cortisols, all these hormones. So if you've got low cholesterol, you're not making enough hormone. You're going to go through the change a little quicker. You're going to have more issues associated with that. So, again, cholesterol is really, really important. So, again, we've got one more stat here. Major risk for heart disease is actually what we call metabolic syndrome. A lot of times we call that insulin resistance. Insulin resistance basically is like prediabetes, okay? And syndrome X, metabolic syndrome. So if you eat fat, it's not going to cause heart disease. Blood sugar problems cause heart disease, okay? If we look at, again, fat, it promotes good metabolism. It promotes weight control. Again, we'll talk about some dietary changes a little bit, but a lot of the stuff that we look at is, less grain, more fat, or more protein, and you're going to see, the weight come off. So again, what should you eat? It's fat and protein should be number one. Carbs, not grains, but carbohydrates from vegetables, maybe nuts or beans should be, number two. But consider, protein and fat at the top, especially animal fats. And I know sometimes we look at, and say, hey, well, what if I don't want to eat meat? you know, and you know, there are some alternatives for that are good. We have to be careful that we're getting the nutrients that we need, though, because sometimes that's an issue as well. With cholesterol, I want to touch on this just a little bit more. Again, we're told, you know, 200 is a healthy level. The Westing-Price Foundation, which is one of those big nonprofit research organizations, found the ideal limit for total cholesterol is actually 237. You know, as like the best, healthiest number that you should have. Again, you know, we talk about if it's too low, 150 is too low. 150 to 200 is the optimal range that you should be in. And if you're a little higher, that's fine. If you're on a statin drug and you're in the 150 to 200 range, if you went on that statin drug and you were below 300, go off the statin drug. There's more risks involved than benefits. I mean, absolutely. Gosh, I mean.
Now in cholesterol, there's different levels. You got regular cholesterol,
Sure.
we call it good cholesterol.
Yeah.
And
Well, and actually, total cholesterol is cholesterol. There's LDL and HDL. LDL is considered bad.
Right.
HDL is considered good. There's really no good or bad. You know what LDL does, the bad cholesterol?
Wow.
It actually puts cholesterol into the bloodstream. So again, cholesterol has to go to turn into hormones. So it has to transport. It also helps your nerves function. It helps so many different things function properly. HDL pulls it out of the bloodstream. So HDL uses it. HDL puts it in. So you're right. You don't want to have these extreme numbers. But at the same time, they both serve a very vital purpose. And it's the total number in the ratio that's more important than anything else. And like I said, again, no research that's been published at all. And there's a lot of research on cholesterol. I mean, let's think about it. That's like one of the biggest things that doctors treat. No research shows an increased risk in stroke or heart disease with cholesterol less than 300. You don't need to take a statin unless you're so sick. And even if you do, the answer is not, you know, it's not your fault. It's your family's fault. No, there's something else going on. If I see cholesterol problems, the number one thing that I think about, we talk about metabolic function, is blood sugar. Number 2 is thyroid. Number 3 is an autoimmune attack, could be involved with your gut. You address those things, and cholesterol improves every single time. You know, omega-3 fatty acids, fish oil, has shown in research to be as beneficial as a statin drug in lowering cholesterol.
Omega-3?
Yeah, it'll cause your triglycerides to drop like a rock. I mean, that's, you know, that's, again, you could take Tricor or you could take fish oil. You know, I personally take something that has a lot less side effects, none, and will actually help your inflammation in your body. All right, eggs. We've all been told to minimize consumption. Eggs cause cholesterol, right? We've all been told that, okay? And eat just the white part. Yeah, because it's high protein, right? Wrong, okay? There's zero correlation with heart disease or cholesterol levels from eating eggs. Zero correlation. Go to PubMed.com or PubMed.gov. It'll take you to the same place. That is the U.S. government's repository of everything that's been published in the medical literature. And type in cholesterol in eggs, and you'll see all these studies that say there's no link. I mean, that's basically what it is. And the yolk is extremely nutritious. It's rich in protein. I mean, that's like, you know, we talk about, you know, how some of these exotic foods that are out there are really good. That's the yolk. I mean, it's the best part of the egg for you. Mm-hmm. Now, again, if you have other issues going on, you do have to look at your whole system. And we'll talk about, again, how everything works together in a couple minutes. But eggs are not causing your problems. How about fiber? Eat your fiber, right? We've all been told you got to get your fiber. It's an important dietary intake. It's important to get, you know, hey, and where do you get your fiber from? Your grains, right? Yeah. Your cereals, you know, your... Okay, so here's the thing. If you eat incidental fiber, it's going to, you know, fruits and vegetables, that's great. I mean, that's where you want to get it from. That's optimal. Excessive fiber from grain-based products contributes to nutrient deficiencies. It will cause everything to get out of your GI tract. Not just the bad, but, you know, you'll move along, but you'll lose all the nutrient value as well. It inhibits absorption. It also hampers your GI function. Basically, it causes everything to break down and work harder. And I mean, it's, again, why are we being told to not do all this stuff? Well, in 1997, the USA ranked 34th in healthcare. Okay. In 2000, we ranked 37th. Okay. Wrong. That's the wrong path. How about 2007? We ranked 48th.
48
out of all the countries of the world.
Oh, okay.
So if we talk about, this is World Health Organization statistics. Okay. 48 out of what? I think it was like 500 countries, you know, that they looked at. In 2009, we were 50th, okay? In 2009, the USA ranked 41st in life expectancy. We spend more on healthcare than any other country in the world. And we have the worst health. Now, 1995 was a very, very important year. Because if we look at these stats before 1995, they're like 13th, 10th. I mean, again, we've got, capitalism, so there's excesses here, so we're never going to be the best, healthiest country in the world. But we were pretty good. Well, in 95, the FDA changed the laws on advertising on TV for drugs. And medications came out and said we can advertise to the public. And it's a statistic. I mean, that's all it is. But if you look at it and you say, hey, well, since we've seen ads for statin drugs, ads for heart, blood pressure medication, ads for diabetes, these things go to the public directly. We've gotten sicker and sicker and sicker. Part of the reason is, you know what? I can eat what I want and take a pill. We all know that. I mean, come on, that's what we're told to thought. Now, 1 in 4 in this country will die from heart disease. 1 in 4 will die from cancer. 1 in 3. So we've got what? 12, 13 of us here. 15, 16 if you count my staff and me. So, 5 of us, 6 of us will will develop diabetes. And that's pretty scary. How about 1 in 3 women are clinically depressed? Okay. 1 in 6 couples are infertile. How about 1 in 6 kids have a neurological condition? We see a lot of those here. You've heard of autism, obviously. It seems to be it's on the rise. Why are these things on the rise? 1 in 8 people have an autoimmune disease. 1 in 8 women have a thyroid problem. These are all chronic diseases. Okay? We've never been sicker than we are today. Never. You thought you were just here for weight loss. Something is wrong. Okay? The advice that you've been following, how to lose weight, how to eat, this advice right here is making you sicker. It's not getting you where you need to go. It's not getting your health improved. It's just adding more weight and giving you more blood sugar problems and putting you on the wrong path. It really is. So again, I said write this down, but nobody has pen and paper. So I want you guys, and anybody give me your email. I will email you this information, okay? And I've got a couple slides that I'll give you. You can give my staff that at the end. But you need to understand, I told you at the beginning, before today, it wasn't your fault, right? The reason you are overweight is because you are unhealthy. It may not be your fault in the fact that you've been following advice, but that advice is wrong. And it's not the other way around. Here's the thing. You are not sick because of your weight. How many people have been told, lose the weight, you'll feel better? Your back hurts because you're overweight. Your thyroid's there because you're overweight. That's not what's happening. You have to improve your health if you want to lose weight and keep it off. I mean, there's no magic pill. You've got to figure out why your body isn't working right. You need a doctor who will help you figure that out, who will look at you as a whole person. What's causing you to be unhealthy? Again, a couple of you have said, hormonal issues. One of you said your thyroid looked great. We've got these different things there. I am one of those doctors. And we're going to talk again over the next 35 minutes about the systems that actually make you sick that we have to look at and see. Does that make sense, guys? It's a different way of looking at it. Again, in the easiest concept, again, it's this one right here. Okay, so how many of you have gone to your doctor with the problem where your metabolism is slow, and they're just go exercise, eat better? I mean, I know my father-in-law has diabetes, and it happened because of kidney failure, and it's all sorts of stuff like that. And again, he abused his body his whole life. His doctor keeps telling him, you're overweight, you're overweight, you're overweight. You just got to exercise more and eat better. You know what? He's never been as small as he is now, in like 40 years. That's not going to fix him. And he's diabetic, and he's got neuropathy, and he probably has a thyroid issue. He's got all these other things going on. And but he has to exercise. That's going to be the cure. No, it's not. It's the other way around. You fix those problems, and the weight comes off. So this is not a one-size-fits-all program. This is a key thing. What we do, it's not about intense exercise. It's not about starving your body. Again, like I said at the beginning, it's not a quick fix. There's no prepared meals, no calorie counting, no Weight Watchers, no HCG diet, no, the weight loss plan places that you see down the street. If you want something quick, that's where to go. But if you want it to stay off, if you want to get better, again, this program is about finding out why you are unhealthy, fixing your metabolism, allowing you to lose and burn fat properly, teaching you how to make the right food choices, but you have to be willing to change your current habits. You must be willing to take personal responsibility for your health. That's key, because nobody's going to do it for you. The very beginning I mentioned, we talked about last year, the year before. What's different? What's different? And again, it's not about saying I want to diet, I want to do this, but it's about actually saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to find out what's wrong, and I'm going to get it fixed. So when we talk about metabolism, okay, we're talking about, I'm going to give you the long, boring answer, the continuous process by which food is broken down into smaller substances that then release energy for vital functions, building up body tissue and ridding its waste. Or basically, how fast do you burn fat? You eat food and it turns into energy, right? That's metabolism. So why are you guys struggling to lose weight? We call this the fat loss web. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down each of these sections. We're just going to, okay, so we talk about what makes up metabolic dysfunction, right? Why is the weight there? Is it a blood sugar issue? Is it an adrenal issue? Is it a gut dysfunction? Is it a thyroid dysfunction? Is it mind-body issues? Is it a hormonal imbalance? How about cellular dysfunction? Stress, oxidative stress, inflammation. You're taking a drug and it's causing stuff to get leached out of your body. How about brain dysfunction, neurotransmitter dysfunction, immune system dysfunction? How about your liver? All these things have an impact on how your metabolism works. And if they're not working right, then you're not losing weight. So we're going to talk for a second about weight loss as a chronic condition, okay? And that's really what we're getting at here, is everything that you guys have going on has to do with some underlying metabolic problem. And it's the exact same, whether it's weight, whether it's chronic fatigue syndrome, thyroid dysfunction, fibromyalgia, diabetes, peripheral neuropathy, ADHD, infertility, celiac disease, Crohn's disease, insomnia, all these conditions. There's a lot of different things on there, and weight loss is one of them. It's your body's not working right, and the reason it's not working right usually has some common threads. So, again, I could take any one of these conditions and probably find 3 other conditions that match that person as well. And again, the first thing we're looking at is blood sugar, okay? Insulin resistance, high or low blood sugar problems. How about adrenal problems? The adrenal gland sits on top of your kidneys, and it's your stress hormone. It's your stress gland. It makes stress hormones, cortisol, DHEA, epinephrine, norepinephrine. Does anybody here have sleep problems? Cortisol sets your sleep cycle. It should be highest in the morning, lowest in the evening. And if it's abnormal, it's going to lead to sleep dysfunction, fatigue, dizziness. A lot of different things can develop from it. It's also going to lead to blood sugar problems. How about autoimmunity, immune dysfunction? How about anemias? Those are red blood cell disorders. How about liver or GI problems? How about fatty acid metabolism issues, cholesterol issues we talked about, right? Hormonal imbalances, poor brain function. All these different things can relate to your weight loss. So I'm going to go through a couple of them and just talk about how they relate specifically to your problem. We're going to start with blood sugar and insulin, okay? You eat food and 2 things happen. It either gets converted into glucose or it gets waste is excreted, it gets eliminated. When it gets converted into fuel or glucose, blood sugar, it is used for instant energy or it's stored. If it's stored as something called glycogen, which is the stored glucose, or it's stored as fat. So when blood glucose gets produced in the body, insulin gets released. Insulin is made by our pancreas, and it helps glucose get into the cells. It helps move it around. It's like an escort. And it takes it to the cells, and if the cells don't need it, it stores the excess glucose as fat, okay? So what sometimes happens is a patient has what's called insulin resistance. You eat food, your body makes insulin, and then the cells say, I don't want the insulin. And then what happens is that sugar doesn't get into the cells, it just gets stored as fat. So you feel tired and hungry. How do you know if you have a blood sugar problem? How do you know if you have insulin resistance? Who here craves sweets throughout the day? If you're irritable if meals are missed. You depend on coffee or caffeine. For some people, they get tired after they eat, right? We see it both ways. How about you must have sweets after every meal? But when you eat the sweets, you still want more. They don't relieve your cravings. So there are lab tests that you can run. Fasting glucose. Now, a lot of you have probably had physicals done, and you had that physical done at 3 p.m. Demand that your doctors do a fasting glucose test, because a 3 p.m. glucose means nothing. It's not valid to use it at all. There's no reason in even running it. How about LDH? This is a marker that helps us see if you have low blood sugar. Hemoglobin A1C. This is a 3-month blood sugar marker. This is the main test that's done for diabetes, okay? And you want that A1C number to be below 5.5. If it's between 5.5 and 6.3, you are insulin resistant. If it's above 6.3, then you most likely have diabetes. We can look at insulin levels themselves, and we can look at your triglycerides, your cholesterol. And again, we talked about earlier how blood sugar usually plays a role in those. So, properly regulated, blood sugar is a primary fuel source for your brain. In fact, a part of the brain called the cerebellum uses sugar more than any other part of the body. It needs fuel, it needs sugar, and it needs oxygen to survive. Poor blood sugar regulation, declining memory, difficulty remembering names and phone numbers, decreased ability to stay focused, maintain attention. How about it's harder for you to learn? Your temperament gets worse, irritable, angry, depression, okay, anxiety. When you're reading or driving, you get tired. And you forgot what you were going to do. Depression, or symptoms of depression, a lot of times come from blood sugar as a cause. And so, you know, again, we talk about some of these issues. Anybody here think they have a blood sugar problem? Yeah, sure. How about an insulin problem? How about a brain problem? Right? I mean, this, you know, again, if you think about some of these things in there, if you've got any of these symptoms, then you know what? You got to look at blood sugar. How about adrenals? Again, we talked about that a minute ago. It's your stress hormone. And adrenal cortisol problems lead to weight gain. Why? Because the adrenal gland basically releases cortisol and other hormones in response to stress. And what happens is if there's short bouts of stress, the system works really good. But if there's a lot of stress, extended periods of stress, the system kind of breaks down. It doesn't work that well. So short-term stress response, here's what happens. Stress initiates what we call a fight or flight response. Everybody here heard of that? No, you get startled, you get goosebumps, your muscles are all, you know, oh, what is it? You know, and your body basically says, all right, I'm going to handle the situation. So this response gets released. The adrenal gland releases cortisol and other hormones. Everything else shut down. It says, hey, if it's non-essential, then we don't want to worry with it. Your immune system, your digestion, everything else is basically, it's not needed for this. It's, hey, you know what? We don't need to worry about digesting that food. We need to worry about running away right now. Cortisol increases your gland's ability to release glucose. So what happens is glucose says, hey, I want out of the tissues. I want to be used for energy. And again, glucose needs to be used so your muscles can run away, right? Okay, so that's what we're talking about here. And what do? We run away, and we get away from the stressor, okay? I don't care if it's a physical stressor. We'll talk a little about what stressors are, but I mean, it could be emotional. It could be, you know, just work. But what happens is cortisol basically helps calm down the stress. And then the body returns back to normal. So what happens is if you have long-term stress, the same concept, again, stress gets initiated. You get this fight or flight response. The adrenal gland releases cortisol. Non-essential functions get shut down. Cortisol increases glucose, so it says glucose, get out of the cells. And then what does that do? That increased glucose leads to insulin resistance. Insulin resistance leads to fat storage. Basically what happens is the body says, I don't want the glucose. So where's the glucose go? Instead of going back into glycogen, it goes to fat. And then when that happens, you get tired. Your glycogen stores become lower. So it's stealing out of your reserves for muscle energy, and it's putting them into your stomach, into your midsection. And then the low energy, low fatigue goes together. Then you're struggling, and then you're not going to exercise. What are you going to do? You're going to eat more sugar. You're going to eat, and you're going to relax. And then what happens again? Sugar goes up, and then what happens again? Insulin resistance, and you get stuck in this cycle. So chronic stressors lead to weight gain because your adrenal gland does what it's supposed to do, and you just get stuck. You get in this vicious cycle. And you can say, well, but I'm not under stress, right? So what we're talking about again, work stress, relationships, finances. How about poor food choices? Caffeine, coffee, lack of exercise, poor posture. Again, injuries. Again, your stress can come from many, many different things. It doesn't have to come from, just one area. It can be physical, it can be emotional, and your adrenal glands have to be looked at. If you want to lose weight, that's an area that's got to be addressed. And if there's a problem there, it's an area that's got to be improved upon. It's got to be fixed. An important point on cortisol. Again, we talked about earlier how it sets your sleep, basically your sleep cycle. There's a natural rhythm throughout the day of cortisol. Altered rhythm affects the energy and sleep-wake cycles. So if you've got a messed up cortisol profile, if your cortisol is not functioning the way it's supposed to, then you're not going to have good sleep, you're not going to have good energy. And most fat burning occurs in what we call stage 4 of that cortisol profile, which is what we would consider our deep sleep. So if we're not sleeping well, then we're not burning fat. So how do you know if you have an adrenal problem? Anybody here love salt? Slow starter in the morning, not a morning person, okay? How about you get tired in the afternoon, 3 o'clock, you just want to take a nap. You can't fall asleep, not just stay asleep, but you can't fall asleep. How about you perspire easily? There's a test that we do. It is a saliva test. It's called an adrenal stress index. It is the only accurate way to measure cortisol rhythm. Not just how much is there, but also what that cycle is doing throughout the day. If you take a blood tests are useful for one thing, cancer. And most people do not have adrenal cancer. It's pretty rare. So if you don't have that, looking at cortisol in blood is completely useless. Because it's not going to give you your function. It's just going to give you that one number that says it's in the normal range or you have cancer. And again, most people are in the normal range, but they have a cortisol problem. So the saliva test tells us if you have a cortisol problem. Anybody here think they may have a cortisol issue? Maybe a couple of you? So how about autoimmunity, all right? Inflammation. Autoimmunity occurs when your immune system lowers the ability to distinguish between healthy body tissue and foreign invaders. So it thinks that that thyroid that you have is actually a bacterial infection, and it goes and it attacks. And that can lead to obviously glands, muscles, nerves, heart, brain. I mentioned thyroid a second ago. Nothing in your body is safe from an immune system attack. 50 million Americans have autoimmune dysfunction. 50 million Americans. 20 million Americans have cancer, okay? Almost 3 times the amount of people in our country who have cancer, all forms of cancer, have an autoimmune disease. Autoimmune diseases, rheumatoid arthritis, Sjogren's, lupus, scleroderma, Hashimoto's, that's autoimmune thyroid, Graves' disease, that's also autoimmune thyroid, multiple sclerosis, celiac disease, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, pernicious anemia, Raynaud's, dermatomyositis, myasthenia gravis, all these different things are examples of autoimmune diseases. There's a lot of different diseases out there that people have. And again, what is that doing to you? Why does that affect weight? Well, because the autoimmunity leads to increased inflammation, which leads to insulin resistance, which leads to obesity. So again, just touching on autoimmunity real briefly, we're going to come back to that a little later because we're going to talk, about, well, the immune system, why does it attack? Why does it think that one tissue is foreign and try to get rid of it? The gut is part of it. We talk about GI problems here. So the gut absorbs nutrients, it eliminates toxins, it metabolizes hormones, it produces energy. 30% of all your energy that you get every day actually come from bacteria in your gut that they make. 99% of the body's neurotransmitters, your brain function, are produced in the gut. 70 to 80% of your immune system lies in your gut. So if you have gastrointestinal dysfunction, that's the most overlooked and mismanaged disorder in healthcare today. You've got a GI problem, well, just take Pepcid or take this or take that, and that's it. So GI problems lead to inflammation, which lead to increased stress response, which is cortisol, which leads to insulin resistance, which leads to weight gain, obesity. So any disruption of the gut function, any disruption at all, leads to inflammation. And then again, like we just said, again, the rest of the story is with inflammation, you're going to end up with weight gain. So, symptoms of GI dysfunction: belching, burping, or bloating, constipation or diarrhea, more than one bowel movement a day, less than one bowel movement every 2 days. Okay? How about heartburn or indigestion, stomach pain? You pass large amounts of gas. You know, all these things, again, they're not normal. It's not just because, you know, you ate that one food and you know, it's your body didn't agree with it. Well, your body's not digesting that food for a reason. How do we know if you have a GI problem? There are blood tests, blood chemistry tests that we can look at to see. There are markers in basic metabolic panels that I can look at for that. How about a stool ecology profile? If you have an infection, there's a stool test that we do that looks for infections. Parasites, bacteria, yeast, fungus. How about something called intestinal permeability? I also call this leaky gut syndrome. And it's where you get inflammation in your intestine. What actually happens is you eat food or you take drugs, you know, it could be, you know, again, your simvastatin, you know, your statin drugs or something else, you know, ibuprofen, whatever. And it causes inflammation in your intestinal lining. That causes inflammatory cells to kind of get out and attack the rest of your body. It creates that inflammatory response. A lot of times it also leads to food intolerances or sensitivities. And there actually are testing that we do through a lab called Cyrix Laboratories to look for food sensitivities. How about the liver? Functionally oriented liver problems are extremely common and often overlooked. I've seen labs come back that show liver enzymes well above normal. They're in the lab high range. And the doctors say, your liver's fine. It's not sick enough for me to do anything about it. The liver, what does the liver do? It's responsible for hormone production, for detoxification, for glycogen storage. Again, glycogen is glucose, okay? It eliminates harmful products, drugs, alcohol. It gets rid of stuff that you take and put in. It synthesizes bile, which helps fats break down. It manufactures proteins. It metabolizes and stores carbohydrates. It synthesizes, stores, and digests fats. How about fatty acid metabolism? So again, we talked about cholesterol earlier, right? Fatty acids are a primary fuel source along with other functions. So that fat forms fuel for our body, gives us energy. Fatty acid disorders are caused by vitamin and mineral deficiencies, insulin resistance or blood sugar dysfunction, thyroid disorders, trans fatty acid consumption. So I said eat your fats, but don't eat your fats that have been cooked at 400 degrees and broken down. You know, like Jason's Deli uses no trans fats. A lot of restaurants are going that way. They take all the bad stuff, all the bad fat out of their foods, and it makes a huge difference. It really does. Medications can cause your fatty acid disorders. Food additives. How about heavy metal toxicities? All these different things can lead to fatty acid breakdown. And what does that do? Well, it can alter cellular communication. Your cells can't communicate properly. It can alter your hormone receptor function. You're going through hormonal changes, menopause, you know, infertility, all sorts of issues. Well, fatty acids can play a huge role in those hormones' ability to be used by the body. And it can also lead to chronic inflammation. To be healthy and lose weight, you need to have proper hormone function. And this is huge for women after they give birth, for women above 40. Again, we talk about, you know, when things tend to change. Fat-burning hormones include growth hormone. They include insulin-like growth factor. They include glucagon. They include adrenaline. They include thyroid hormones, and they include testosterone. Fat-storing hormones include insulin, estrogen, and cortisol. Hormones are evaluated through both blood and saliva testing. If we do a blood test, we want to do what's called a free fractional, because you want to see what the body is actually producing, not what's being stored. So there's two different hormones to look at in blood. Unfortunately, a lot of doctors run the total hormone, which isn't that valuable when we're looking at what your body's making. So again, when we talk about people losing weight or not losing weight, right? So again, it's you know, which is your imbalance, and that's the key thing. I mean, all these things we just talked about have a positive or negative impact on how your weight loss works. There's no secrets at all. It's all about what your web is. To lose weight, you got to eat right. You have to exercise. You have to make sure your physiology is working properly. And that's the big thing we're really hitting on tonight. If any of those are missing, weight loss is a lot more difficult for you. And again, you can work all you want. You can work as hard as humanly possible. You can say, I'm going to exercise 6 days a week. I'm going to wake up at 5 every morning and spend an hour and a half exercising every day. But if your metabolism isn't properly working, as soon as you stop exercising, it's going to come right back, if you even lose it in the first place. So your physiology, all that we're talking about, your metabolism, dictates how well a diet and exercise program will work for you. Well, you run the appropriate tests. So how many of you have gone to the doctor and have had a physical? Okay? I hope every single one of you have had a physical done in the last couple of years. You need to make sure that you do that. But they all said there's nothing wrong with you. You're perfect health, right? Your tests look beautiful. Everything we ran came back normal. Why? They're not running the right tests. Or they're looking at traditional lab ranges, or both. So what we're talking about here is, number one, we talked about a bunch of different tests that are out there. And they may run TSH for thyroid when there's 10 thyroid tests. They may look at glucose at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and say your blood sugar looks normal when it wasn't fasting, and they didn't look at the other 5 markers that they should look at. They do a lab test, and they use the same labs I use, like Quest or LabCorp or Solstice, and they say everything's in the normal range, right? So again, when I look at blood work, these ranges, and have you ever looked at your blood work? Have you ever seen like the labs that come back? If there's an abnormality, there's a little H or a little L that goes next to it. Those ranges are nothing more than statistics. That's it. Who's had a test done? So what you say is 1,000 people go and get glucose done, and all 1,000 of those people are within this range. So if all 1,000 of those people, then 950 of them were probably sick, right? So it's statistics. It's a bell curve. It's everybody who's sick goes into that range. The problem with that is, if you're in the range, it doesn't tell you anything. Congratulations, you're as healthy as everybody who's sick. We use functional lab values. They've been published in the medical literature. They're more sensitive, and they reveal problems before they get to that abnormal range. What we're talking about is this functional lab range here, and we'll use a couple examples in a second. But a lot of times you'll see an abnormal low or an abnormal high or this huge normal range. That huge normal range I just talked about isn't really normal. It's a statistical analysis of everyone who's had the test done. So you could be here when you should be here. More specifically, what we're talking about, we'll use cholesterol as an example, right? So they say, hey, your cholesterol levels are 148, or even better, 135. I've never seen cholesterol that low. That's wonderful for you. No, that's not good. What's happening is it should be 150 to 200, and when it's that low, it means that there's impaired fatty acid absorption. Again, blood sugar, thyroid, who knows, at that point what the cause is, but there's something wrong. It's not optimal. You're not making enough hormones, which leads to fat gain, leads to weight gain. How about TSH? Okay, thyroid. You said your thyroid was normal, they said. So TSH, which is usually the one test that they run, maybe you'll get a T4 and that's it if you're lucky. They say, well, it was 4.2, so you look great. You're within the medical range. The problem with that is the Endocrine Society, 14,000 endocrinologists, determined over 5 years ago that normal range is 1.8 to 3.0. So they say TSH should be here, and you're there. So you know what? Your thyroid's not normal. How about glucose, blood sugar? 85 to 99 is where you should be, okay? The standard lab range goes from 65 to 100, 65 to 110, depending on what lab you look at. So if you're 73, you're hypoglycemic. And I promise you, if anybody is ever 73, you're dizzy, you're lightheaded, you're not moving much, but yet you're completely in the normal range. Does the difference between functional and normal and lab ranges make sense to you guys? And so what we're talking about is, are they running the same tests? I use the same tests they do, and then I do 50 more. So that's usually what happens. So they're going to run, a standard test, CBC, lipids, complete metabolic panel. We run those tests too, but then we look at a complete thyroid panel. We look at vitamin D, 2 vitamin D tests, not 1. And I don't know how many of you have had your vitamin D tested. They've said it's low, and then it went from like 26 to 31, and they were ecstatic. No, it should be 50 to 80 if you have no thyroid problem, and 90 to 100 if you do. So how about we look at leaky gut? We do an intestinal permeability test. We look at your immune system. Are you autoimmune? Do you have a shift into dominance? We look at your adrenals. Look at your cortisol rhythm. Look at your hormones. Food sensitivities. Again, we look at gluten. We look at soy. We look at yeast. We look at dairy, egg, coffee. How about other grains? And we talked a lot about grains earlier. And how about maybe infection panels, stool microbial ecology profiles? Do you have a parasite? Do you have a yeast infection? Those tests we do differently here. All the stuff here, they don't know what to do with it. They ignore it completely. And gosh, even on the thyroid, You can occasionally get somebody to run an antibody test to confirm if you're autoimmune, but they say, well, take your Synthroid, because that's all that we're going to do for you. They're not going to address it. They do nothing to improve an autoimmune condition at all. So we do a functional neurology workup in our office. We're going to look at your brain. We're going to look at blood sugar regulation, insulin resistance, cortisol, inflammation, fatty acid metabolism. All these different things affect brain function. And altered brain function can cause obesity. Has anybody evaluated your brain neurologically to see if it's making you fat? No, of course not. Yeah, of course not. You think it's important to maybe do that? Yeah, absolutely. Altered brain function can directly cause your obesity. Again, impaired brain function can lead to obesity, okay? So if we see that the nervous system is not communicating right, and we can do these different tests, so we know at least one of you has a brain that is not working as well as it could. How many more of you, think that could be something in? And you think about everything from balance to memory to concentration to depression, right? So how does that affect your work? How does that impact your family? How does that impact your quality of life? Okay? Are you guys ready to change your life? If you're ready, we can help you. And again, this is what we do, is we look at weight loss from a metabolic point of view. The healing process, again, the body must be approached both neurologically, as we just saw, again, where that can come into play, and metabolically. This is the only way that it heals from anything. Only a healthy body can lose weight and keep it off. Now, not everybody's sick, okay? But if you have trouble losing weight, if you have issues where you lose the weight and you gain it back, you lose the weight, you gain it back, it's a vicious cycle. And you're seeing that it's an unhealthy body that is most likely leading to it and causing it. I want you guys to know 3 things. Again, we'll give you guys all an opportunity to meet with me one-on-one if you're interested to actually do something about your weight loss. But I do have 3 rules for accepting patients in my office. You have to be willing to make lifestyle changes. I talked to you about grains tonight. I talked to you about blood sugar. I talked to you about stress. You have to take accountability for your health. And I also need you to know that the system that you've been a part of, mainstream medicine, is here to treat acute problems, not chronic problems. And we talked about how weight gain, is a chronic problem. Again, there's no magic pill. A lot of the pills that are out there can actually lead to more problems. Unfortunately, in our current healthcare system, if you want to do something about your health, you usually have to reach into your pockets. I can tell you that we've made our care plan affordable, so 96% of patients can afford it. And we've got different payment plans, as little as $100, $150 a month, depending on what we have to do. Sometimes it can go up to $300 a month. And I want people to know, again, if you want to do something about your health plan, if you like what you saw tonight, we have an approach that works and get results. You saw one quote in the ad that we ran from one of my current patients. We've got plenty more where that one came from. And my goal is not to help any one of you lose weight. My goal is to get your body functioning right. And the majority of times the weight just comes off. That's what we want to see. I thank you all for your time.